a company, it's a bunch of Montgomery County guys. And I can't think of the name of them now, but it's all retired. All retired. They're all cool. Yeah, I did great. Those were
My kids did too. We're in Columbia.
Yep.
You must have went to a better concert. We did that.
No.
They didn't care if you went to classroom.
Right, that is true.
They were checking it out.
Says your mother.
It was like the one, barely 300 people in class.
I bet they think it's 7:30.
I should have.
So there's.
And not that I'm going to eat, but
I want to say this. This is not meant to be.
hey, hello.
So I took it and I got like.
Yeah.
Start is that way?
It's bad. Right? You've driven around in Ellicott City. Wow. Big Bloomington roads are dangerous because you get people who just don't have any.
It wasn't just you.
Amy, what time did you think it was?
Oh, but only because I had a prior freak out because I thought that it was yesterday. And I was like, oh, I was driving home from Rome.
No, not yesterday.
No. And this wheel right out. Traffic. Everybody's slamming on the brakes. So at least get up to highway speed. About the road.
Recording in progress.
Hey, good evening, everybody. This is a work session of the Greenbelt City Council.
Turn the speakers off.
And my name is Emmett Jordan. I serve as mayor. Council members, Mayor Pro Tem.
Kristen Weaver, Mayor Pro Tem.
Daniel McKinney, council member.
Jenny Pompey, Council Member.
Amy Niesel, council member.
Rodney Roberts, City Council.
Okay. Are there any information items for the end of the meeting?
I have one.
Okay, and I've got one as well.
And I don't have a specific item, but it'd be great to talk about the schedule of meetings and priorities.
Well, let me just say this. We hold council work sessions on Mondays and Wednesdays several times a month to exchange information with community stakeholder groups and also to gather information from staff, advisory boards, or residents. No votes or formal actions are taken at our work sessions. Our work sessions and meetings are open to the public except for executive session as authorized by state law so that residents and others can observe council's deliberations. We do strive to provide reasonable opportunities for the public to voice opinions on matters being considered, and we'll pause periodically for public comment. Tonight, this is the penultimate budget work session.
Yes.
So we've got one more to go, although we're going to have some public comment also with the next public hearing. But I think we'll pause every 15, 20 minutes at a minimum. We'll probably pause more often than that. But we've got possibly a lot to move through this evening.
Ms. Pope is on her way.
Okay, Ms. Pope is on her way. So also, with the public comment, if you wish to address council or the city administration, ask a question, you can raise your hand if you're in the room, and after being recognized, please go over to the podium, state your name and where you live in Greenbelt. We need that for the minutes. If you're on Zoom, you can raise your virtual hand. We'll promote you so you can speak, but you do need to log in with your name. We don't accept anonymous comments from Zoom. Or you can use the Q&A tab also to submit a question. And if you're watching on cable TV or on Facebook or live streaming on YouTube, you can submit a question to us by email by sending an email to questions@greenbeltmd.gov. So with the public remarks, please limit your remarks to 3 to 5 minutes. Speak on one topic related to the question under consideration. And as always, we ask you to avoid questioning the motives of others. And let's all be civil in our remarks. We're neighbors here, so that's the Greenbelt way. So as I mentioned, this is the penultimate, the next to last budget review. And we've been at this for since March, actually going over the budget that's been submitted by City Manager Jose Samaran. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Mayor, and hi, Council. Good evening.
Fantastic.
I'm joined by our wonderful team here. So any question you have on any department, we have the right people here to answer and work through this budget. So we're ready and we're excited.
Heard it from Mr. Samaran. Any question that you have, they're ready. And we're all in this together. Yeah. So. Well, so you know this budget, it's really one of the 2 or 3 largest responsibilities of council to make sure in adopting the budget that the proposals from the city manager are in line with the capacities and the needs of our population here in the city of Greenbelt. So we take it very, very seriously, and that's why we hold as many public hearings and public work sessions on every aspect of the budget. So I'm thinking there's a memo that the city manager and Ms. Gaiman have put together about what we're going to do tonight. But what I'm hoping to come out with at the end of the night is having a discussion with council and with the public, just kind of looking over and quickly summarizing, looking at the various discussion items, proposed changes and modifications that we've talked about, and kind of coming to a consensus before we have the public hearing at the next meeting and moving towards the adoption of the budget. So I'm thinking that, would you like to tee up the memo, budget memo that's been prepared? Or we can either do that, or I was thinking, Mr. Samaran, if you would like to quickly just summarize the strategic framework and foundational pillars that went into conceptualizing the budget process.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor. We had a couple, three items that are new to this budget. One's not so new necessarily, but what are the pressures that are driving this budget? What we understood as being council priorities. So that's part of our management letter that's went to council. And one of those things we're looking to fund were the fully supporting the compensation study that was directed by council, supported by council, implemented by council, and that was to bring a lot of bring the wages up to market conditions and paying staff the right amount of wages for the type of work that they're doing. So that's one of the pressures of the budget, and that was a priority to ensure that we were funding. We also had a couple positions that we wanted to be able to roll into our budget, and those were the CIT positions. So we have two CIT positions that were previously ARPA funded that in the proposed budget, they are funded through our general
Yeah,
general
it
fund.
counts as intervention.
Correct. One is at the police department and one's at CARES position. In addition to fully funding and supporting the comp study, we wanted to ensure that we are keeping up with cost of living and wage increases in the area. So this budget supports a 2% COLA and a 3% merit increase for staff for 2025 to keep up with market conditions. We also had a significant financial constraints. A reduction in real estate revenues or year-to-year growth seems to be slowing down based on the data provided to us by the county. So we had to adapt to that market condition and reduce our revenue projections. We're also closing out the ARPA funds. So we are entering in a post-ARPA environment. We're not going to have all that cash that we've become accustomed to for the last couple of years.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. So, financially, we're looking and feeling that we're in post-COVID, but at the same time, we're still, dealing with the fallout and the impacts of COVID, looking around to the commercial part of Greenbelt.
Oh, absolutely. And I don't know when, if we'll recover. I was reading in the Washington Business Journal report from the downtown bid in DC. They conducted an analysis of the economic activities in the downtown, compared the data from pre-pandemic to where they are now. The downtown area is up to 65% of the economic activity that it had pre-pandemic. Whether they can close that 35% difference. They've got ambitious proposal. There's a proposal that a task force just released this week. So that's in downtown DC. A lot of the communities, particularly in the commercial office space, as you mentioned, we're seeing high vacancy rates, and part of that is employers don't want some employers don't want their employees back, but primarily employees don't want to come back into the office. And so part of the trend that we're seeing for employers is this idea of, are employers commute worthy? So folks are looking at, employers are looking at their office spaces as, is it enough of an attraction to draw out employees back and to draw employees back into the office? That, I think, gives us some insights into, or gives us some guidance on how we should be thinking of our commercial space strategy. Over the last couple of weeks, been talking about marketing strategies, strategic marketing plan for the city. And so I think positioning the city as a commute-worthy place for our commercial office space would be a good idea. Maybe we can, now what do we have to do to become commute-worthy community?
Well, there's been a lot of talk and a lot of articles on the concept of a 15-minute suburb where everything is within 15 minutes, just in terms of retail, shopping, but also jobs.
Correct.
So when you're talking about the environment in Washington, D.C., and employers not bringing their employees back, the federal government is a big part of that here in this area.
Correct.
So it's a mixed bag for us because we have a lot of federal employees that live here, but they are staying in Greenbelt more, which theoretically would benefit our businesses and whatnot. So it's just a time of great uncertainty.
Right, a lot of uncertainty. The 15-minute measure that you mentioned, that measure is used a lot for all kinds of things, especially for quality of life. People want to be within 15 minutes of parks, schools, grocery stores, and so that's a good measure. I've got two more items on the key influences. One of the things that we are known for as a city is exceptional service. And I think certainly every department is aware of that. They thrive for excellent service. I think you've heard it from residents about all of our services. So that set the stage for building a foundational framework, the foundational pillars that we introduced in this budget, and the strategic framework for our activities. And so we're building on this value of delivering exceptional services to deliver council's vision and goals. So a lot of what you see in our budget is in line with that. The foundational pillars are the following 6 pillars: exceptional service, diversity, equity, and inclusion, collaboration and partnership, preparedness and resilience, sustainability, smart economic development, and innovation. So these foundational pillars are driving a lot of work. I am excited to have the work session on the council's goals and objectives and the proposed framework that was approved, it was approved in the consent agenda at the last council meeting. And we're going to work within that framework and within the foundational pillars. And I think that there's some good synergy between those two documents.
So at this point, it's the city managers and it's our staff's budget. And, as we've worked through it, council may choose to actually adopt it, and it will become Greenbelt's budget as a whole, council's budget. And as you mentioned, our goals and objectives, we've got so many new members on council, we had to sort of pause from the goals that we had 2021, 2022, and just rethink and reevaluate and reframe the collective council's thinking. So we'll be having another work session, kind of some other things shortly in the next month. Let's go ahead. There were 4 documents that were associated with this work session. And the first one is a memo.
Yes.
I'm wondering, can we put that up on the screen? Next page, I think. There we go.
Yep. That's it.
Okay. So, Ms. Gaiman, will you kind of, this sort of is an overview
Sure.
of the proposed changes and modifications to the budget so far?
Absolutely. Good evening, everyone. Bertha Gaiman, City Treasurer. So yes, we initially presented a balanced budget. I considered a balanced budget on March 25th. And since that time, during the work sessions, during the 11 work sessions that we've had on the budget, there's some noted changes. There are a number of editorial changes that we have listed. We've attached that as well. But there were also some financial ones, financial changes that had financial impacts. And so this memo lays them out along with the budget screen. But this memo explains exactly what those monetary changes are, well, what we are recommending. And so there's about once we add them all together, there's $77,300 to be added to expenditures. And so as I worked with Mr. Samaran, we talked about how to address this increase. And so as I was actually reviewing and updating the 2024 budget that's going to come to you next week, I realized that there is at least one revenue source that we could tap into to absorb that $77,000. And so that's what the memo says. On page 2, it talks about how we might actually absorb the $77,000. So I'm talking about reducing the abatements. So right now, they're showing very low through the 9 months of the fiscal year, with only 3 months to go. I believe it's going to be pretty low. And so we can make that adjustment in 2025 by $75,000 to absorb what we need. So that is my recommendation. The memo is more detailed than what I'm saying, but the bottom line is, even with these recommended changes, we bring before you now a balanced budget. It goes from revenue over expenditures goes from $49,500 to $47,200 once we add the revenue into.
So on the abatement, looking at reducing the abatement line, so the trend, it's been trending down in previous year. PY stands for previous years. Yes. So it looks like what you're suggesting is we reduce the line, so it's still a little bit more than what we're anticipating, but it should be enough to cover it. But the trend, from 2021, 2022, 2023, the abatements did peak up.
Oh, yes, they were rising. They were rising for the last couple years, but it seems to be peaking, it's leveling off right now in 2024. If you look at page 2, we budgeted $700,000 for both categories of abatements, and as of March, 9 months into the fiscal year, it's only $278,454. So there's $400,000, or a little over $400,000 remaining. And I looked at April, and I see none for right now. So I think we could certainly use these dollars to absorb any expenditure we need to absorb.
That's a good thing. Just want to make sure that we have enough of a cushion just in case things.
We absolutely do, Mayor, and I also brought my CAFR with me, and to remind you that we have $2.1 million in real estate abatements in the set aside. So, and at the end of this fiscal year, whatever is left over, we will add to this number for 24. So right now, we're in excellent shape for future abatements. We don't know what they will be. We never know until we get them. That we continue to have that same issue in getting information. But certainly, I don't think we would come close to $2.1 million.
Right. Very good, very good. So what I'm hoping to do is this is an overview and then pivoting to kind of take a look at the edits quickly.
Sure.
And the council request, and maybe actually working through each section just real quick. That's what I'm thinking about doing. Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, I think there's one thing that came up during the recognition groups that didn't get captured in this, and that was that $20,000 for the refugee assistance program that was on a different line item compared to, and then they requested money separately through the contributions group. That's on page 240 in that miscellaneous, the grants and contributions miscellaneous funds section. So this is page 240 of the budget.
Oh, yes.
I think that's one that didn't make it into this memo as money that we don't need to have, because they applied for money in a different way than we gave them last year. So we actually had that, and that was one thing we had talked about last week, reallocating potentially some of that for direct food assistance. But that's one number that isn't referenced in
Not
your memo
here.
yet.
That is correct. And actually, I thought we were just going to add that to the 16.5.
Okay.
That
So,
was a one-time grant,
that was
right?
yes.
That was a one-time.
Right, so that was going to add $20,000 to the 16.5 that's for council's use during the year.
Change the ultimate amount, but it is moving it from one line item to a number.
Exactly.
So that probably does need to be addressed in
Okay.
some fashion.
Right. So actually circle back and talk about page 240 a bit.
Okay.
As we move forward.
Just want to reiterate that change doesn't have a net budget effect. It's just moving it within the same category.
Yes,
And we can do that. We will be able to do that administratively.
yes, and it would be in the adopted budget. That change would show there with the rest of these changes here, or any other change.
Okay. If there are no further comments, let's pull up that next page, the council edit request. Is that the next page? Well, actually, it's 2 pages down. Council edit request. We can kind of move through these. So, and they're color coded. You know, I see blue and I see pink and purple and green. Lots of green.
Yes.
So, you know, I really want to compliment Mayor Pro Tem for submitting so many modifications with her astute eye, proofreading and picking up so many things here. So just in terms of what the colors mean, what does the green mean? This would actually be the next page, the council.
I don't have the guy didn't make it on there, but blue means that they
That page. Yeah.
so the green have been executed.
Yes.
And there's a reference to it in the first column, completed. So those blue and greens have been completed. The red ones and the purple are still pending to
Still
be
in the
done.
works.
Yeah, the questions that need to be answered. Yeah.
Okay. So red ones are to be addressed. The blue ones are just a little more discussion, and the white ones we haven't had a chance to incorporate them. And the goal of having this list is when we come back and approve the final budget, these modifications will all be incorporated in that document.
Correct, that is correct. And a lot of it is just to keep us on track. Some of the questions coming from staff on the other pages, just they're asking questions so that we are drawing our attention to the matter so that we can make corrections if necessary.
Right. And so flipping back to the previous page, the FY 2025 budget edits, those are actually sorted by staff member.
That's correct, that's correct.
And the same goes, blue are, what's the blue?
Blue are changes made awaiting final confirmation. So they're and the
Green are ones that actually have been incorporated.
correct. And they're
And the
from
red ones are either there's a question or
Question
to be determined.
to be determined, that's correct.
purple.
Purple is a question as well. Needs review. And so the idea, Mayor, is that when we update the adopted budget, we will all sit around the table and we will check these off as we will address them and check them off to make sure that they have been addressed. Yes.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem?
Well, and I just also want to add that although a lot of those I did compile a document, but Jay Davis also sent some comments and edits, some things as well. So those are noted that they weren't all me seeing typos, and they are mostly typos and things like that. But it was not only me. Just it's two.
It was you and Jay.
It was me.
That Jay Davis. Wouldn't you know it? Jay Davis has her hand up at this very moment. Jay Davis.
Jay Davis, Greenbelt East. Just wondering when we would be able to comment on changes or possible changes that the council might consider.
Well, we're going to kind of work our way through that
Okay.
section by section quickly. And of course, we will have a public hearing coming up at the
Well,
next
but
meeting.
some of these are, I've already talked with the city manager, and some of them might make a change in what you're talking about tonight. So I don't want to wait till the hearing.
Oh, okay, okay. So what do you say, council? We can kind of flip through this section by section. If there's any comments, if there are edits that are listed, it's kind of easy to see the council modifications or edits because they're chronological. They're actually by the page number. So let's just dive right in. Ready? Okay. So the general, the first section, just looking at flipping back to that, the council edit request.
Now, see, most of those edit requests, those really, that list that there is really, I think, almost all typos.
Right, so that would really take us up to the first section, and we talked about the strategic framework a bit. So I'm thinking we can move to the general fund.
I guess, is it necessary to go section by section? Because I don't know, I mean, we've gone through every section in its own work session.
To labor over this, but just if anybody has any comments on the section, that aren't already recorded, we can bring them up, and if not, we'll just keep moving.
I'm with Kristen. I mean,
I think we have some proposed changes that are in the memo. I don't feel necessary to go through section by section personally, because I think we have the changes here in the recommended changes. If we discuss those and any things that are addition, that'll come up for which section there are.
Well, that'll make things go really fast. Basically, we'll just be accepting everything that has been put in front of us with a few
No, that's
modifications.
not what I'm saying. I'm saying that we've already discussed all of each of the department budgets previously in its own work session.
That's true. There's a couple of things that I did want to focus on.
Okay.
Just in terms of the summaries on revenues and expenses, I don't know if anybody had any overarching comments on where we're at with those things. But I did want to look at page 50.
Okay, so now we're
50,
looking, I think, in
59,
the
actually.
budget book.
In the
Shania,
budget
thank
book,
you.
yeah. I was just curious. I was asking Ms. Gaiman about the unassigned balance. That's, looking forward to the end of the year. You've got information in the book which gives us 2023 at $14,017,305. So I was just wondering, how do you think we're going to come out? You're working on that now, the end of the year, unassigned fund balance.
Well, based on what I'm reviewing right now as of March, I believe expenditures will be expended. We had meetings. We have only one more meeting to have with a director, but most of the directors are indicating they will be spending their entire budget. So if that is the case, then these numbers might change in terms of 24. And so what I've been saying is that as we get closer to adopting the budget, these numbers, I can true these numbers up in terms of 24 estimated.
Okay, but
Yes.
there will be a balance that's going to be carried over from
Certainly there'll be
next year. And that
into
will be
next year.
available.
Yes.
And the reason why I was asking about that is on page 82, the fund balance and the way our reserve policy is set up.
Yes.
I was just wondering, we adopted this fund balance goal and reserve policy to kind of move beyond a PAYGO system of addressing capital projects. So within that, we set up a couple of new funds. One was a rainy day fund, which would be 15% of general fund expenditures. But
That's correct.
the other bucket there was a budget stabilization fund. And that requires us to put aside 3 to 5% of the general fund
That's correct.
each year. But there's flexibility in that. So when we're talking about where we're going to make up the difference, I think council has the ability to determine whether it's 3%, 4%, or 5%.
Correct.
Which actually frees up a little bit of money.
That's correct, Mayor. Mhm.
So I just wanted to kind of bring that up. And so if you can let us know for the next, before the next council meeting, what that percentage would be, 3%, 4%, or 5%, that would give us a little more flexibility.
Okay, can do that.
Any comments about that?
And let me just clarify, you are looking at the 24 numbers. You want me to estimate what it could be for using 24?
Should be,
Okay,
because it should be between 3 and
3 to
5%,
5%,
but it's
so-
at council's discretion to decide. And that's the purpose of having a budget stabilization fund.
well, let me just note that we've been using 5 up until for the 23 number on page 83. That is the 5%.
That's good.
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
So beyond that, Mr. Samaran already spoke about the 2% cost of living increases and the 3% merit increases. There's a net change of one full-time employee, more or less, within the number of employees.
That and the wages are the major drivers of this budget.
Compensation study, we're still making adjustments. We're kind of catching up, keeping up with that. We talked about abatements.
One thing that's not factored in this budget is the collective bargaining agreement that we expect to do at the end of the year.
That would actually, the bargaining would take place this year, but it would actually take effect in the 2026 budget.
That's correct, yes. Mhm.
Expense we've got factored in here is the legal expense for our representation on that project.
Wondering, looking at the summary of changes, we kind of addressed that in the memo.
Yes.
90 and
Oh,
91.
okay, which one are you on? So the summary of changes is really just to show the difference from the previous year budgets. So this reconciles to the summary, the general fund summary. So each one of these departments, every department is listed here. And it goes from page 88 through 92. And
Questions or comments from council about the summary? We've kind of gone through all this. And this is not the last chance. This is the next last chance. If there are any questions or suggestions or thoughts that you may have. Okay. I'm kind of torn about, I would like to talk a bit about page 240.
Mr. Mayor, could
Yes,
you
please.
speak closer to the mic? There's trouble hearing you in the audience. Oh, me? Sorry, I'm speaking too softly.
Okay. I'd like to talk about page 240 just a bit.
240.
And that's the grants and contributions page.
Yes.
So for a few years, I've asked about what we're doing, the way that we're addressing our discretionary grants and the advisory board grants, as well as the process. We have a great process now for addressing the request for recognition and contribution groups. And I think it works really, really well. So I do have a suggestion. I've talked to the city manager about it a bit. So with the advisory board and committee grants, we're making grants specifically to several of the advisory boards and committees. And I would like to open that up. I'd like to actually just have one line item. Of course, ACE would be different. The grants to ACE are restricted, kind of a specialized grant. But as far as the other advisory boards and the CERT and the CART, I'd actually like to kind of consolidate that all into one line item and open it up to all of the advisory boards or committees. If they have a good idea, they can put it forward. We can use the same criteria as we use for the other contribution groups. If we need a committee, and I'd really like to have somebody else rather than council kind of accepting those proposals. So the Reparations Commission is also different. We've made an allocation, but if people in APB or the other committees, CRAB, have a request for funding, they have a good idea, I think that we should have some resources that are available to address it. So I think we can work out a pretty simple framework. I've just sort of outlined general criteria. So would it be possible to put something like that
Yes,
together?
from the administration perspective, there's several individuals with grant making experience. So we have a couple models internally. Just like this week, council approved nonprofit grants through ARPA funding. We have a good evaluation tool that we use for those. So we can replicate any one of the successful models that we already have, expand or abbreviate to make it a faster process. So we're open to executing however council wishes on this, and we have the expertise to do it.
We could round up the amount that's available a little bit too, maybe to 58,000.
Sure.
And so then you would have two, if you are to consolidate or put all those allocations into one pot, there would be $56,900 there. And in the grants, there would be a total of $36,500. That's the $16,500 plus the $20,000 that was previously allocated to the refugee assistance program.
Right. And I made an error there. I do want to keep ACE separate and the Reparations Commission separate. So I think when I totaled that up, it was, I don't know, $8,900. So that's one suggestion. Mayor Pro Tem?
I wonder if this is something, though, that we already have received plans from CERT and CART, for example, for things that they plan to do. Some of these other organizations already, have things that they generally do with this funding. I wonder if this is something that we want to do precipitously right now, or if it would be better to leave the ones that we have that have gotten funding in past years and may already be expecting that, and use some of that other miscellaneous for other advisory boards over the next year, and then think about changing this not for this budget but for the next budget. Just because I worry about some of these that it seems a bit precipitous to change this suddenly now without having talked to these groups about how that changes their plans and how they're thinking about things.
Well, I can see your point as far as grandfathering in some of the requests. I'm not sure that we've actually gotten, there are two groups that made specific requests, and I'm not sure that in the past year all of the funding was actually used. Maybe because it was there, it was used. I just want to open it up to all the advisory boards.
I think there would be a different way to do that, though.
We're sort of at the same point now as we've been at the past couple of years, because I brought this up and it was the same thing. Well, let's think about it and see if we can do it next year. So
another way to approach this would be if you're looking to have grant funding available for things as they come up. For example, there's a request that we haven't gone to sponsor the Join or Die movie.
Yes.
Those kinds of programmings. There in the memo that City Treasurer has put together, there is still money left unallocated.
Right.
So you could take some of that unallocated $47,200 and add it to this function, and that gets you to, I think, where you want to be in terms of having a funding available for grants without affecting the allocations that have already been put forward. So CERT and CART have spoken before council about their requests. Green Aces, PSAC, and the others have not, but I imagine that the individuals on these boards are very in tune to our proceedings, so they might have tuned in, looked at the budget, and anticipate this. So that's a solution that we could address your need and be able to move forward with it if council is amenable to that.
I'd like to sort of take a middle ground approach, but I would like to kind of codify this thought of opening it up to the other advisory boards and committees. Yeah, Mr. Roberts.
Well, I hate to tell you, but I don't think that we really need to set up a situation where we hand out money to all our boards and committees. That's not why we have boards and committees. It's not, so we can give them money and they can, have a good time spending it. We have boards and committees to give us their opinion, the opinion of the collective community on issues that are facing us, not, to get money to spend from the city council. I think this is just opening up a can of worms. And I look at the number of, not boards and committees, but, other groups, recognition groups and contribution groups that are proliferating now. I mean, we have a list that's probably 10 times longer than it was, 5 years ago. And if we're going to give money to every group that comes along, that's a burden on the taxpayer. And our taxes are already a burden on our taxpayers. So we don't need to open it up so we can just give money out to every board and committee or, organization in the community. We have a responsibility to be conservative with people's tax money.
Well, thank you. And I actually agree with you. And I feel like it is, by having this codified with money going to certain groups, I'd rather have a process where, if a good idea bubbles up, we can fund it. But it's not like money's definitely set aside for this committee or that committee. Instead, it's more competitive. You got a fixed amount of money, and instead of saying these 3 advisory groups can apply for, if they have a project, a special project, which is how this came up to begin with. I think the Reserve Advisory Committee board had a really good idea, and we wanted to fund it. But then it sort of stayed in the budget. So that's how things happen sometimes. Ms. Pope.
Yeah, I think when groups came, to us and had a special event or needed some extra some funding, I think we never said no, right? But you also have groups, they really do a lot of things every year, like certain CART, for instance, they already know what they're spending their money on. So I think it's the way this is, I mean, they're every year they're doing something and they have something to show for it. But I also think anybody else that needed money, we always gave them money. So I don't know if we need to necessarily just open this process up, because we have a lot of boards and committees. I'm not sure if that's necessary.
Ms. Pope.
I would just say that I think, I hear where the mayor is coming from on the one hand, because there are groups that do want to sometimes host an event and they don't have a budget, so they can't do it. And like you were talking about the Join or Die film, that's something that CRAB wants to host. They've been wanting to host that since February, and they're not on our agenda for a work session to do a request until I think June. So it does take a really long time for some of these groups to get, I think it's like $200 is what they want. So I feel like there needs to be a process that a way for us to get through those kinds of requests quicker. And I don't know if that's having a small pot of money that we say that we utilize for that purpose, but I think, waiting 6 months to make a $200 request is it's a bit too much. I think there's a better way to do it than that.
And if I can make another comment to the, so the $30,000 that's in there for the reparations committee, so that was for last year, and now we're just rolling that right along, right? So that might be an issue, I think. Is that like now something, an annual, is this an annual budget, so to speak, or was this a one-time starting, or we knew what they were doing, they needed assistance with or guidance from some specialists, or so why is this rolled over? So that might be a little bit drastic.
Part of it, as I understand it, I don't want to speak for the Reparations Commission. I've had limited conversations with select members. They are still in their organizing role and working with a consultant to create a structure for the Reparations Commission. So they haven't completed that process. There's a couple members are interested in more training, particular DEI training that hasn't been part of the formation of the body. So there's still a desire for more training and more assistance for them to get to where they need to be. And this is just my limited understanding of their inner workings.
I'm just thinking, that especially the higher amounts, we might want to revisit that once, and, every year as it comes and say, okay, what are your funds are needed for? And then maybe, however we want to do it, but I'm not sure. Maybe we should have just a smaller pot and then limit it, maybe say up to $500 or up to $1,000. Like the $200, that's not a problem. I mean, they should be coming, that we should have that available to anyone. If they want to sponsor that movie, I mean, that's not a big amount. So sure we can, and they don't have to wait or go through a special process for $200, so.
Or an abbreviated process, and we're open if council wants to send that to the administration to follow up and find a fund to do it. We're happy to take that on. I think to Ms. Pompey's point, we don't need to wait 6 months for a request like that.
And the other thing in terms of process is, should it really be, we collectively get a lot of requests for different things. So it would be nice to have a small group of residents or someone to just look it over and say, hey, we're going to, instead of putting everything in council's purview, I think it's nice to have some third-party review, just kind of look over the small requests that we get.
Yes. If you tell everyone they can come to you for money, they're all going to come to you for money.
Exactly.
Mayor.
Prefer not to say no.
Well, we'll send them to you then next time.
Oh.
Did you check already?
There you
Mayor,
go.
Let me
Yeah,
just
please.
point out one thing. Under 69 grants, that 16,500 is a dollar amount that we put in last year and carried over to this year. This was the pot of money to address the things that you're talking about right now, as people are asking, may come before you to ask for $200, $500. This is the pot of money that was established for that.
Right.
For that reason. So I just wanted to point that out. And then in terms of the other items that are carried on to 2025, as I was saying earlier, they were placeholders. The idea was to have the money there just in case you wanted to allocate it, and so that we could balance the budget, because it's so much easier to reduce it than to try to find the money. So that was sort of the intention here.
Right. And there's one other item on this page, and it sort of falls, it could be under miscellaneous, or it really needs to be under the recognition groups. But I've heard, I understand the City Stars group is in need of some resources, and for whatever the reason, they did not get their information in, and they actually have an opportunity to do some things this year. So I want to either put a bookmark in that, or they're supposed to be coming up with some information to reflect their needs. I don't know if other council members have also heard from them, but I heard from them.
Well, Mr. Gibbs, you haven't talked to me today.
Got that? Oh, do you want to come up now? Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Austin Gibbs. I'm the founder of Greenbelt City Stars. We are City of Greenbelt, organization, and we are Double Dutch Jump Rope Team. We are here tonight asking for a project grant in reference to getting some kids from Spring Hill Lake into our program. Also, we're trying to take these kids to New York, and also we have an invited trip to Japan. So we are trying to see if we can get some assistance with the project grant to help these kids to travel, as far as training equipment, uniform, and so forth. So that's one of the reasons why we're here tonight.
How much? So this would have to go through Mr. Varda but the council has a little bit of discretion as well. So how much were you looking for?
Okay, for the operating budget, we're looking at for 10,900, and that's for 30 kids, 30 kids. And to take 12 kids, it'll be 24,000. So when you total both of those, the whole thing comes up to 34,900 total. Now, we will match because we do fundraisers and different things to help the kids also too. So we just asking for assistance so we could help to take all these kids on the trip with us.
Thank you, thank you. So, the process, we'll have to put it through Mr. Varda and the regular process, but council has some discretion if there's something that we might do to help. It's any questions or comments from council? Yeah, please.
Well, my understanding is that the trip to Japan is not until next summer of 2025. So I think for that, and I think for all of us, that's a pretty substantial amount of money. That's more than any other individual recognition group has asked for. But I think especially for that project that would be next summer, I think that would need to go through the deadline for putting in the project grants is usually through the usual process is usually January or February, and that would be enough time then for the funding for a program that's next summer. Now I don't know about some of the other things, but at least for that related to that trip, I think that needs to be probably part of the next budget process, not this one.
Okay, well, basically what we're trying to do is some of the money will go towards helping train the kids. We have to train the kids also. We need equipment, we need uniform, so forth. We can't wait until the last minute to get money to go on a trip. Everything has to be planned within a period of a time. So the grant that we're asking for is to help us prepare the kids to get there. You're looking at the year but you can't wait until that year to plan a trip. So we're trying to plan ahead of time to see what we need, the kids we have. We have to train the kids in order for us to get them to go there.
I appreciate that. So, but I mean, there's a process, and you guys are well established, and you're ambassadors for the city in so many ways. The performances that you do in Washington, D.C. and all over really reflect very, very well on the city. So I don't know if there's a way for us to provide a small seed money grant, maybe just looking at these other organizations, maybe $22,500 initially is under miscellaneous grant. And then, this information needs to go through the regular vetting process. So perhaps there'll be opportunity for additional funding, but I just don't want to leave them out in the cold completely. Councilmember?
Thank you for the information. I think this is all stuff that some of us are new to this process. So we're just hearing about some of this. So I think it would be helpful to understand more about what this process is, flesh it out, because my thinking is that there are probably more groups that in the community that would probably also be asking for funds. So we want to make sure that we're being consistent on whatever that process is. So I don't know if I'm quite comfortable saying this is the amount and we should look at moving things right now at this meeting. I think we need to probably take that back, take the information that you've provided back, and then figure out what our process actually is.
That sounds good.
Okay. On the application, it asks some information. We fill the application out, all the information here that you all need to review. And if we have to come back again, we will be able to come back. And if you have any questions or anything like that, we are open to questions to answer them. We've been in existence for 33 years. I started this program in 1991, and we've been going since 1991. This is our 33-year anniversary. We just jumped at Fox 5 a couple days ago. We've been at the Apollo in New York over the Christmas holidays. The kids got third place in that tournament where you had teams from all over, not just United States, but all over the country.
Appreciate
We
that.
also did the folk festival at Salisbury, and we did the one in Virginia. And we did a lot of, for the past 33 years, we did a lot of stuff. We've been traveling all over the world, from Hong Kong to the British Virgin Islands. We've been all over. And I'm trying to keep it floating. Hopefully, when I decide, someone else younger will be able to take it over. But it's a good thing for the kids. You know, it's something different. And it's just not female. We have males also that jump.
Really
You know,
appreciate
we have kids that jump professionally that represent United States also too, that comes from our program, that come back and help us sometime. So, you know.
Okay. So if you could, share the application with Mr. Varda back there. Mr. Roberts?
Yeah, I just had a question. How many kids you got that want to go to Japan? How many would be on there?
We'd be taking 12 kids. We'd be taking 12 kids. Yes.
Have what, two other trips or something?
Yes.
Is that what you said? But they're what, in the States or what?
New York, we go to New York. We have to stay overnight when we go to New York. So that's one of the trips that are kind of expensive, although it's close by. But Japan is the trip that
You got 12
really.
kids and how many other people go?
We have three groups of family kids. We have one group has 3 girls, one group have 2 girls and a boy. That's 2 different family. And then we have 2 sisters from another family. All the other groups are single kids.
How many chaperones are you taking?
We'll take 3 chaperones. 3 chaperones.
Thank you for all you do. We really do appreciate the City Stars.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate your time.
Let's see. Let's pivot to Jay Davis.
Who do I give this?
In the blue shirt.
The blue
back
shirt
there.
back there.
Shirt back there?
Coming up.
I know this guy in the blue shirt back there.
Jay Davis, Greenbelt East. These are comments on page 240. Since you're on 240, I thought I would say that. First of all, there seems to be some confusion that there's no process. There is a process for both of these groups. There has been an extended process for the contribution and recognition groups now for about 5 years. There's a committee set up and they look at all of them, and that's why the deadline is so important, because they have to look at it. In the past, there have been some people who have turned in late, but not this late. And so, I think as far as first of all, you have to become a recognition group first. You can't ask for any money until you are a recognition group for at least a year. And then you can go from there, because we want to be sure that the group is actually going to be long-lived, sustainable. In answer to Mr. Roberts' comment, the number of recognition groups or contribution groups has not increased 10 times in the past 5 years. And in fact, some of these are no longer in existence. So if you look at it, there's at least 3 that are no longer, we don't give money anymore. We kind of keep stable. We get new ones, but then some of the other ones drop out. As far as the process for the advisory boards and committees, what they're supposed to do, and basically this should be one of the messages that goes out at the beginning of the budget process. You send a memo to each of the advisory groups and committees. If they want to request money, they request the money. So like CERT and CART did, I believe the Forest Preserve Advisory Board sent in. The Arts Advisory Board sent their report in January, what they requested. And I bet you don't remember what they asked for, because they asked for less. If you look on 240, you've got 1,000. They said they don't need 1,000. Please drop us down to 500. So that would be save some money there. So, and some people have not sent in a report or a request. And if they have not sent in a report or request, then you should put 0 there. You just don't keep going. So that's something that has been asked in the past. We've always been kind of loosey-goosey on that. And I think that that's another way to make it firmed up. If they don't turn in a report, because they're supposed to report on what they've spent,
Yes, they
and
are.
then ask for what they need for the next year. PSAC usually does, but I don't know if they did that this year.
Oh, PSAC, no, PSAC didn't.
Okay, I did.
Certain card did.
Since I'm not on council, I don't get that report, so I'm glad that they did, and maybe Green Aces and so forth too. So I think that is something that you need to put into the process for next year, that when you ask, just like when you send out the forms to the contribution groups, and they have to fill out the application, that there's a form that goes to, and send it to each of the committees and boards. If they don't need it or want it, then that's something that you can look at your own. By the way, the Arts Advisory Board also, in one of their reports, did have a request, and I noticed it never came up anywhere, that we usually give $5,000 and add it to the Public Arts Fund. They said that it's going to take a long time to keep increasing that fund. They requested that you make it $10,000 a year and not $5,000. So that is just another item that perhaps you may want to keep in mind when you talk about changes. Now, I have other comments, but this is just page 240.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, I think that makes more sense as a process, that leave it the way it is for now, but make sure that next year we request from the advisory boards at the beginning of the budget process a report on any money they spent. I know, for example, Green Aces, I don't know if they sent a formal report. They spent a lot of that on some of the reusable bags to distribute. And I think they were hoping to do that with some of the money again for this year. But I would feel more comfortable planning for that rather than adjusting things what feels like on the fly right now. And then if there are things that come in for the other committees in the meantime, then we can use some of that miscellaneous from the section above for if somebody, for example, Crab has this idea that I think and maybe work to develop a process before the next budget cycle, because we do have that little bit of wiggle room, other projects that we can fund small projects if we develop a process for that in between the year. And actually, we talked about with the recognition groups when Greg was here last week, thinking about how that might work for other groups that want to make requests in the middle of the year, and how we do that, not just for the advisory boards, but for other groups that have ideas for special projects. I would feel more comfortable doing that rather than suddenly changing this on all these groups that may have been planning for things and that we haven't actually talked to them about it.
No, I hear what you're saying, and what I said before is, I'm comfortable with the idea of grandfathering in the request. I just want to get this codified, because this is not something that's just being put in on the fly. This is something that's come up at least over the last 4 years, and every year it gets kicked down the road. So I'm just trying to.
We just need to remember it this time. We need to remember it in like September, October, and not in May.
So let's put that in when we vote on the budget. After hearing public input, we can vote on it. Hey, so I'm not getting a lot of guidance from council.
What are we voting on?
We're not voting on anything. This is a work session.
Right, but you said that we were going to put something in to vote on, and I'm just not clear what that is.
Vote on the budget itself. So I want to I have put a proposal forward. I'd like to flesh it out a little bit more. I'd like to move ahead with it. I'm comfortable with grandfathering in the groups that have made formal requests this year, but I want to, well, when we vote on it, we'll vote on it.
This is off topic, but as we're going through the Jedi process, I'd just like you to know that grandfathered is a really racially charged term, and we might want to move away from it.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. So I would like to kind of pivot back to the other sections of the budget, but please, I am proposing that, and I'd like to be able to vote on it up or down. We'll vote on the budget. So I'm not really getting a lot of feedback from the rest of council, other than we've already gone through everything. So there are a couple of other items that I highlighted. I don't know if any other council members highlighted any items based on our previous discussions that they wanted to bring up or move forward.
Mr. Mayor, just for clarification for myself, we are to introduce language how to review and award grant funding for the $16,500 plus the $20,000 that would be moved to that area.
No, I was saying that I'd like to combine under the advisory board and committee line number 70, I'd like to call out the ACE grant and the reparations committee grant separately, but I'd like to aggregate the other grants into a pool of funding and actually increase that amount a bit, say by $2,000.
There's
And in the interim, I'd like to work up some language that would allow the groups that have previously already put in a request to have that go forward, but to open up these grants for advisory boards and committees to the other advisory boards and committees, and just kind of put a cap on it so that we're not constantly increasing, or that we're not having these separate line items every year, but instead actually review them based on merit. So it's not like an open book. Instead, we've got a set amount, and the best ideas that come forward would be approved. Ms. Pope.
You don't want the rollover, is that right? Am I understanding that right?
No.
You want the rollover every year, like last year they got 1,000, we put 1,000 this year.
Exactly.
You don't want that.
I don't want that going
Okay,
forward
and I
after this
kinda-
year.
Okay, and I can, that's kind of the same what I was trying to say earlier with, having the same every year. So we shouldn't roll it over. I think they should apply for it. Also, there's a lot of them where we haven't given anything to in few years. There's 000 boys, 22, 21, 22, 23, 24, 20, yeah. So maybe we can take those out?
Well, only when when there's no dollars showing. So 22, 23, if there's information where we have actually expended funds, we have to show it.
I'm not seeing anything there, so is this?
Oh, which,
There's 3 groups that would come off for next year. and
okay,
that
I see
is-
where you,
and-
yes,
and that's-
absolutely, they can go off, yes. Mhm.
And just to review those 3 groups would be the concert band, the Boys to Men, and Greenbelt Unplugged.
And the tennis, Greenbelt Tennis Association is there as well. Yeah, we can certainly take those off, yes. But Mayor, I really want to just clarify what you're asking. I want to get it right here. So for this budget, 25 budget, you want to combine everything except ACE and reparations and just have those dollars there, but not have them allocated to any group. Is that correct?
As far as how it appears in the budget, yes.
Thank you. And then add $2,000 to that total.
Yes.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Just to be clear, though, that's your recommendation. We need to decide whether or not we're actually going to do it that way or not.
Well, we would vote on it.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. And then I know we had questions in the room. There's also a question in the Zoom. Okay.
Ms. Rosado is on the line. Dr. Rosado.
Good evening. I just wanted to share some information since the Reparations Commission was brought up as well as being funded for next year. The Reparations Commission was elected. It's a commission that was elected by the people of Greenbelt. And usually when a Reparations Commission is elected, it is incumbent upon the governing body to set the parameters upon which that commission will operate. So we were not told that we would have 2 years or 1 year or 2 years or whatever. So we have been been trying to organize ourselves so that we can complete our tasks as quickly as possible without any guidance. Thank you.
I appreciate that. There's no, on my part, there's no expectation that you would have finished your work in 1 year or 2 years or 3 years. It should take as long as it takes.
We always said that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So moving on to the other budget edits and council requests, I had one item that I wanted to bring up. It has to do with our carbon neutrality goal in public works. We talked about this a bit, and the edit was made as far as the goal to change it from 2030 to 2050. And I think we're better than that. I think we can do better than that. I think that's 25 years from now. So that's why I put forward 2030 originally. Maybe that's too ambitious, but goals are meant to be things that we stretch for. So I'm wondering what council thinks. 2050 is too far out.
Yeah, I believe that Kristen had said that 2050 came from an advisory board.
Right, the 2050 is what Green Aces had in their recommendation to council. So we could change that, I think, but I think it was an error that it was listed as 2030 in the budget because the memo from Green Aces had a certain number percentage by 2030 and then the carbon neutrality by 2050. Yeah. So I think I think that's in alignment. Is it the COG goals? I think I could dig out the memo, but I think that setting goals that we can't meet is also problematic. So I think it was, I have Green Ace's memo, I can find it.
It's a conversation that they've had at COG, the attainability, but I'll say it again. I think that I think we can do better than 2050. So.
I think before we change the recommendation from what our advisory committee has suggested, we should do it based on some more conversation about it instead of, so here's the memo. So this is the greenhouse gas reduction goals. It was 20% by 2020, 50% by 2030, and actually this says 80% by 2050. So those are the Council of Governments adopted goals. And then I think, so Green Aces was already recommending going beyond COG's goals of 2050 reduction of 80% and achieve carbon neutrality by 2050. So we're already exceeding COG's goals.
Yes.
And we are following, I think it was just I think this is the year it should have been in the budget based on what Green Ace is. I don't think we should change that. I think we should correct it because I think it was just an error in the budget. And I don't think we should change it substantially without having more conversation about it. That doesn't mean we can't work towards getting there sooner, but in terms of officially changing the number, that seems problematic to do sort of on the fly.
No, we already talked about council member.
Yeah, I concur with Ms. Weaver. I would hesitate to change the number unless we actually had a plan to get to the new number. And I don't just want to, say a number or pick a date unless we actually have steps that we're going to be taking to meet that goal. So I wouldn't be comfortable changing it until we actually have had a conversation about what are the steps we're taking to meet that goal.
Well, there has been a lot of talk about moving to biofuels, which is one way that would actually have a pretty big impact. Go ahead.
And something else we had put in that framework that we haven't discussed yet, but something that came up in our council retreat also was developing a more comprehensive climate action plan, which then, if we find that we could do better than that, then I think we could adjust for future. But I mean, I'm absolutely an environmentalist. I think there are many things we can do to achieve that goal, but I think we have these advisory committees for a reason. We listen to their advice about what they seem feasible. I would rather use their recommendation, and then as we develop this further climate action plan, if we think we can achieve that by 2045 or 2040 or something earlier, but I wouldn't be comfortable changing it against the Green Aces recommendation without a lot more discussion.
Well, I mean, that is an item that is in our planning framework for council. So it's something, as we move that forward in the short term, we can talk about that some more. I don't know. So, council, are there any other modifications to, we've got all of staff sitting here, department heads. Yes, please.
Yeah, I was just wondering, we did have two groups that asked for increased funding this year. I think it was CERT asked for, CERT, was it CERT, CART, CERT? CERT and CART asked for $10,000 for a new trailer, and then the Greenbelt Cinema asked to increase their annual contribution to $125,000, $50,000. So I just wanted us to talk about those items since we did have residents come up here and make those requests of us.
Okay. What are your thoughts?
So my thoughts, I mean, I think if we had the money to give CERT the $10,000 for the new cart, I think that would be great. I mean, I think because as it is now, it doesn't seem like it's functional. So they're not really able to achieve their mission. So I don't know if we have the funds in our current budget, if that's something that could come out of our ARPA funds. But I think that it's something that we should consider because we have the group, but they're not really functional in their current capacity. At least that's what I took. I don't know, Silky is very in touch with this group too, but that's what I took from our conversation with them is that they can't really fulfill their goals as they currently are.
I agree. Thank you for bringing that up, by the way. Yes, I agree. And obviously there's big problems with that trailer. It's not safe and they want to take it to all these places and all these functions and it's just leaking. It's not, it's old and needs to be replaced. So I'm going the same way as you. I think the $10,000, if we can find that for that trailer, that'd be excellent.
And when we discussed it at the previous meeting, I think we were in agreement that we were going to look to replace that trailer. It was a matter of identifying the funding source. So my takeaway from the meeting is that we were committing to finding a way to replacing that trailer, whether it's savings in the current budget, ARPA money, and I know we say ARPA, and there's no endless pot of money here. So as we're looking to, as we're reconciling all our ARPA budgets, we're looking to prioritize what's available to reallocate. So we said we want to fund the food subsidy programs through the remainder of the calendar year with the ARPA money. So we're reconciling the ARPA funds, this is an item that we have on our list to look to fund. So we're committed to replacing it. The other thing that we're thinking about internally with the team is how do we create, and I haven't had this conversation with the CERT team, so if you're watching, apologize, we didn't get a preview of this. But we discussed, is there an opportunity to have the trailer serve multiple functions? We have a special events coordinator that's coordinating large events in the city, that there could be a benefit that they could also use it. The police department has several functions that we're looking to increase our community engagements that they could use it. So we've started to have internal conversations to explore what's possible from a program side before we approach the CERT team and say, hey, could we repackage this trailer to have multiple functions? So we're committed to that. We're trying to get through this process. But I welcome if council wants to take money from its current pot of money and say we're putting $10,000 towards that. I also welcome that. That'll make it easier for me. It'll make it easier for me.
I think you got that covered. Thank you. I think you're doing a fabulous job, and not to mention the water for the dog park. So I'm just kind of.
I do appreciate that. I know the CERT team, just in terms of recruiting and training some new members, and getting a really, really lively and vital CERT team is a priority. And talking to Dr. Kressler and Bernice and other individuals. So right now, the membership is pretty stable. It really hasn't grown over quite some time.
Yeah, I think they're reactivating now a little bit because there were some issues, some health issues, and so I think they're back on track or getting back on track, and it's going to be moving forward just nicely, and probably recruitment's going to start as well.
Okay. Hey, well, I'd like to go ahead and.
So that's one item. There's a second item.
Yeah, so the Greenbelt Cinema requested increased funding from their annual, what do we call it, a stipend or a grant of $50,000 to $150,000. They came here, they gave us a presentation about that. You know, we did get a bond bill for them this year to do renovations on the theater. And from what we heard from them, they are in a position now where with their current funding levels, they're not going to be able to continue to sustain their current programming and certainly not to grow their current programming. And since we're investing into that theater, I think we need to consider how, you know, if we're investing in the theater through this bond bill, we need to consider investing in them as well, just to, you know, make sure they're still around. I mean, the theaters really were hit hard by COVID, including our theater, our cinema. Although our cinema has made a comeback, it just hasn't come back to full strength yet. So I just wanted us to discuss that.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Well, and we did just give them $25,000. That was on the consent agenda for the nonprofit grants on Monday. I think it was a pretty big increase. I think, as I recall, Josue, you talked about when it came up before that you know, their increase that 50,000 hasn't increased in a while, so it would be something to think about increasing. But going from 50 to 150 is a pretty big jump.
That needs a different discussion all around, possibly, at some point.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay, other than at the budget, where we're talking about allocating money? Okay.
May I provide some background? In reference to the grant that Mayor Pro Tem Weaver just referenced, the nonprofit grant, 25,000. We the administration, we were looking at grants, and we were looking at an adjustment to the subsidy for the cinema to be adjusted for inflation. We thought the 25,000 will help them move further along to meeting their financial goals and meeting what they anticipate being a big deficit. I had a conversation with the director just prior to this meeting, and the financial cliff or the financial deficit for them is imminent. So that was not clear to me when we were having the discussions about the nonprofit grant and their presentation. So the director is here tonight, and I will welcome, if council will be open to, I'll welcome to hearing directly from her on two particular items. One, how imminent is the financial cliff for them, or the deficit, and two, the inflation adjustment, or what will be an inflationary adjustment. And putting it in context, the subsidy has been 50,000 since, I believe, year 2000, and the cinema contract went into place 2015. And so I think those are two important data points or items that the director can speak about. If council is open to hearing.
I'd like to make a point on that. Because originally the agreement that we had with the group was that after 1 year or 2 years, there would be no subsidy, that they would be able to make it on their own. So
the contract always had
so it's a big leap, you know, to want another $100,000 from that, because that was the original proposal and that you put forth.
The contract always
that's
had.
what we agreed to.
Sorry.
Dr. McGrath, welcome.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for giving me another opportunity to speak to you all. The original contract always had the subsidy in there. Of course, it's always been our goal to be able to move away from the city support. We are not just holding out our hand every year, year after year. We really do want to get to where we do not need the city support. Unfortunately, we had a plan to do that with the addition of the second screen and the addition of the beer and wine license, and the pandemic disrupted both of those things. So it delayed the second screen opening, and it delayed the beer and wine. And it just has transformed our industry. So there's just certain things that we cannot overcome. We think we can eventually. It's just right now we're in this crunch period where not enough people are coming back and not enough people have renewed their memberships. There's been dips in individual giving. And so we're trying to recover from those, situations that in a lot of ways are outside of our control because of the shrinkage of our audience due to COVID. And I agree, it is a big jump, and I understand that. As the city manager is saying, adjusted for inflation, $50,000 and $2,000 is $91,000 in today's dollars. So what our argument was, that's what the city was paying when they had a for-profit operator that they weren't happy with. I mean, there were a lot of things that we felt like, and that was part of our pitch, is that we could do a lot more with the space, and we have. But I completely understand that it's a lot, and I've been speaking with city staff about other ways that we might be able to make it work. Right now, it seems in the next few days, hopefully we'll be able to figure this out, that the request to the city wouldn't have to be 100,000, but would be more like 10 to 15,000. That would be enough to get us through this current crunch period that we're in, because we are, like I said, we're doing everything we can, but we are right up against it at this point. So, like I said, I hear you that it's a big jump. I think it would be another conversation to talk about whether we should just put in a cost of living increase in there just so that this wouldn't come as a big surprise. We have always resisted asking for more because we are very cognizant that we don't want to be. We would like to be self-sustaining. We just have certain issues that, as you know, you never just drive by the cinema and say, oh, look, if that's a movie theater. So there are some things that we just physically can't overcome, our geographic limitations and, things like that. So, yes, if we don't receive the funding, we will have to make some serious cuts to the programming that we provide. And as I hope I conveyed last time, my concern is that we very quickly will be back to the for-profit operations where all we're able to show are the first-run movies, because it's the specialty program and the educational programming that is not as revenue generating. However, we find that it's fundamental to our mission and fundamental to what we want the cinema to be. We don't want it to just be a movie theater. We want it to be a community resource, and we won't be able to do that at our current level of funding.
And so although anything we allocate extra tonight wouldn't come into play until July 1st.
The 25,000 ARPA fund that the grant that you mentioned. So that when we were advised by city staff to apply for that to help cover the shortfall that we had with our stipend amount was reduced. I'm not too sure why. Over the past few years, we weren't getting 50,000; we were getting 48. So we were 8,000 shy. And so they said, well, we can use these funds to help compensate for that. And I said, okay, well, if we could apply for the full 25, it would help us cover some other shortfalls. But that money is not going to go much past July. So that will help us get to the new budget cycle. But beyond that, it doesn't really, in terms of where it impacts the requests that we made before.
Well, and I think, so it looks like based on the budget memo that Bertha, that we have this 47,200 based on the changes that we made. So we don't have a wiggle room of $100,000 anyway.
No, I understand.
But I don't know, I think I would be comfortable thinking about going up a bit because it has been so long since inflation and we do have that little bit of wiggle room. I don't know what others think is reasonable, 20, 25 to add that, and then look for next budget to see if the subsidy otherwise can go up or keep pace. What do others feel is a?
I think that $25,000, knowing what I know about our own budget picture, I brought this up aware that we did not have an extra $100,000 in our budget, but I think if we could give them an extra $25,000 to help them keep going with their mission, because the mission is important to the city, the theater is important to the Roosevelt Center. I know Mr. Hartman has mentioned before that they bring business to the other, they generate revenue for the other businesses, and I don't know that would happen if they went back to their prior operation.
Ms. Pope?
I don't, I mean, I agree, and I, of course, want to help you. There's no question about that. I just think that we need to, for the future, come to some kind of agreement on what the real picture is and what can we do, what do we have to do, so we kind of like, don't get like, if I heard $150,000, I'm like, okay, where am I going to get that from? I mean, there's just no way that we were going to be able to give it to you, even if we wanted to, right? So we're going to have to make sure we get that straightened for the next budget cycle.
Yes, and like I said, my hope is that,
But, I mean, you need to, so you have a more clear picture, okay, this is.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, your comments, Ms. Pope, because, you're working with the city manager on a regular basis. So for a council to get hit with a $150,000 request, it's the communication and just the back and forth so that there are appropriate adjustments. Those need to happen. So we have to have a comprehensive understanding of what, your business plan or what your plans really are. And I know that it's a tough time. Congratulations on the rebranding and the website. And I was looking at it today, the new opportunities for memberships and actually being able to pledge annually and to break it up month to month.
Right.
That's convenient.
Yes, we hope others will find that the same.
As well.
Yeah.
Well, I would propose putting in 25,000 as item that we vote on in the budget, an extra 25,000 for the theater, and if others want to adjust that number, we can discuss that now, or we can discuss it when we vote.
I'll be supportive of the 25,000, but
sounds
I
good
don't
to me.
think, right, but I don't think anything higher than that at this time, I would.
No, I
I'm just
understand.
cautious because there's a lot of other things as
I
well.
know, I
So,
appreciate
but
that.
like I said, we need a comprehensive plan for next year, and of course, the inflation,
Right.
We have to take all of this in consideration and just come
Right.
up with a plan.
No, I appreciate that. I completely agree. And I think that, again, our goal is that this is a one-time increase, that we'll be able to decrease it. And then over time, if we're able to, move away from it, that's absolutely what we want. We're not looking to be subsidized.
We do appreciate everything you do, you know that, right? I mean,
Yeah.
there's no.
Yeah,
no
thank
hard
you.
feelings there.
No, it's okay. No, I understand.
Sometimes I'm just, have.
It's business. That's okay. I understand.
Okay, I see Mr. Hartman has a comment.
Michael Hartman, 2 Court Garden Way. I'm wondering if the city could be more creative in supporting the theater, working with the theater, and instead of giving straight money is one thing, but perhaps in-kind services, perhaps taking up, I don't know what it pays for now, but things like taking up the rent for the second screen, doing other creative ways to support the theater without actually putting money out there, but taking up some of the responsibilities. You'll end up paying for it anyway, but it's the same suit, different pocket than just straight cash. And I would love to see Dr. McGrath and the city staff work out more creative ways of helping them do that. And I think that might help alleviate the part of the hardship that they're facing right now, because they are really important. Also, would love to see volunteers come back. Some of the greatest memories I have been behind the concession stand making popcorn, and being an ambassador for people coming in. Are you a member? Here's the stuff about the member. So those are ways to do it without handing over cold hard cash straight. Be creative and do those things, please.
Yeah, your suggestion about in-kind services is something that I think we're continuing. We're still doing the cleaning services there, are we not?
Yes. And I have had some other initial thoughts and spoken to city staff about the possibility of things like, without burdening other departments, but are there ways that we could post things through the city's social media channels, or because you have greater reach, or could we share things with the recreation department list, that kind of thing, so that, because we have a list of 6,000, but I think theirs is like 16,000. So just ways that wouldn't hopefully be too impactful in terms of, not monetarily or in workload, but would help us increase our reach. Because all of that, once we can get people in the space, what we usually hear is like, oh, this place is so great. I had no idea. I'm definitely going to come back. I'd like to join. I'm going to bring friends. It's just overcoming that hurdle of it being, if I hear hidden gem one more time. So, yeah.
You just want it to be gem, not
Yeah, exactly.
Councilmember McKinney.
So, just adding on to that, with the whatever additional subsidy, the 25,000, is the plan then to use that for direct marketing? Because is that the tipping point to get people in so that you're raising your revenue? Like, what is the 25,000 actually going to go to?
Yes, it's to help increase the amount of outreach that we are able to do, because right now it's a real chicken and egg. Like, we need to bring people in, to do that we need to spend money. Well, we can't spend the money until we get people in the door to make the money. So we have done a little bit of that, and we've seen some really strong returns through paid advertising on social media, which is actually pretty reasonable as opposed to a bus wrap or a billboard or something where it's really hard to know what impact it's having. Like, you can measure these metrics really in a very detailed fashion. So that has been promising, and we want to be able to do more of that. It's also just about this moment where the COVID cautious audience and our core patrons is basically a circle. It tends to be older women who are the core of art house audiences. That's nationwide. That's not just us. And that's the same group of women who are people who are concerned about coming back to the theater. So we still have patrons that have said, I don't feel safe coming back yet. So that's fine. It just means we can't rely on that pool any longer. We have to find new audiences. And that is a hurdle, because those younger folks, they either stay home and watch things on streaming, or they go to other theaters, they go into DC, they don't know about us. So it's we're at this moment where we're trying to build a new audience base, basically. And so we've hit this trough, and we're trying to find creative ways to bring them back. It's not just through the advertising, but also through the programming. So finding things that they're interested in coming to see.
Yeah, thank you so much. Hey, just one. So with the bond money, when it comes in, how will that impact your operations?
Well, it's wonderful that we will be able to make these improvements in the space. So we're really looking forward to upgrading certain systems and just parts of the facility. None of that money can go directly toward operations. So unfortunately, although it's a very big pot of money, and we're very, very glad to have it, it doesn't help with the current shortfall, if that makes sense. Like,
No, that's not what I was asking.
Oh,
about.
I'm
So
sorry.
when the bond money comes in,
Yes.
you'll be renovating the stage, and so will you have to shut down for a week or 2 weeks, or what? How's that?
Well, we are in just the beginning stages of figuring out that plan and working with city staff and Public Works to figure out how we would do that, and is it something that's done in-house, what can be in-house and what can be put out to a subcontractor. The goal is that for things like replacing the carpet, that's a pretty quick thing, that if we had to be shut in the auditorium, of course, we have a second screen, so we can still have things that we wouldn't have to be completely shut down. And for the stage, the plan is, at least at this point, that all that work would be done during the daytime hours, and then would be safely sort of cordoned off, so that at night we could still have shows and it wouldn't disrupt. So hopefully very little.
That's what I was asking. I did see you walking into the theater, though, with a couple of cans of paint there the
Oh,
other day. And just
that's a
nails
different
and-
project.
It's a different
yes.
project, okay.
More on that soon.
Okay, well, thank you, Don.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Okay. Hey, so let's open up the floor to the public to questions. Are there any questions? Jay Davis.
Jay Davis, Greenbelt East. First of all, I want to thank council and staff for putting the community health coordinator funds back in. I think that is necessary for many people in Greenbelt. And I'm very happy to hear that you're going to add $25,000 for the Greenbelt Cinema. Sometimes I wonder if people even know what is going on in that theater. You know, there's a lot of, it's not just movies anymore. There's a lot of things going on. And it would be interesting to find out how many council members are members of the theater. There's another way where council can help, is that you join the theater itself and go to the movies and buy popcorn. Uh, but there were two questions I had. You took care of the CERT trailer. I've mentioned the public art edition, but on page 242, there was a statement that the retiree prescription subsidy was going to be increased to $75,000 because it needed to be raised. But on 243, it was still listed as 65,000. So I'm not sure which figure you're figuring.
The 65,000.
So you're not going to increase to the 75?
No, we're going to keep it at 65.
Okay. How many retirees are using the subsidy?
I don't have that information right now, but I can certainly send it out to you and to council.
So, of course, if it goes over that, we've always covered overage anyway. Somehow you work it out. But it's something that for next year that you may want to increase it then, but it's going to stay at 65. And one of the questions, it was mentioned that there was a program, a Red Oak mitigation program, and it was not funded. But then I just asked the city manager, and he says that may be a grant. We need to take care of our infrastructure, and our trees are infrastructure. There is some issues with the oak trees, and just like, you know, elms and everything else, if we don't take care of them, climate change is unfortunately going to take care of most of our trees in about 50 years. But where is that mitigation money going to come from?
Mr. Summeron.
Yes, this is a part of a grant from the Chesapeake Bay Trust. So this is on page 275. It's over 300,000. I don't, Terry, do you have the exact?
I don't know.
Okay.
It's also multi-year.
It-
That leads to a little confusion, I think.
Yeah, so it's a multi-year project. We're booking 89,000 in the current fiscal year, and that's on page 275. That's that line item of the Chesapeake Bay Trust, and it has parentheses new.
Some new money there?
Yeah, so we're recognizing 89,000 off that project in 2024, 178 in 2025, and there's money to be recognized in 2026.
Another 89,000.
$89,000.
Okay, I'm glad to hear
Good,
that.
yeah.
Because it appeared from the memo that I saw that it wasn't being funded, and I thought that's not a good thing. Thank you.
It's in the budget.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good catch.
Let's see, Mr. Orleans?
Thank you, Bill Orleans, Greenbelt. I was pleased to hear Mr. Hartman suggest that the city could do more with regard to the rent that the theater has to pay for their subsidiary building. This has come up in the past. I would like at some point council to consider more than it's been willing to do, Greenbelt's relationship with Christakis. But that said, I can't afford to be a member. I can't afford to go to the movies very often, if at all. I can't remember the last time I was in the theater for a movie. But Caitlin and her team does wonderful programming. And it's distressing to me that people throughout the region don't know the wonderful programming she's doing. I believe Greenbelt Theater has been noted in one press outlet or another as being one of the few remaining large screen theaters in the region. And that alone, I would think, should be a draw for many people to come to Greenbelt to do the theater. Why more people don't know about it, I don't know. But something that could be done hyper-locally to increase an awareness of what's being in the theater, even though I don't like advertising. The Greenbelt Connector drives through all of town and on the periphery of town, and I would think with relatively nominal cost, like $20 maybe, Public Works could affix a placard to the back of the bus that, among other things, could inform people who would be viewing the bus passing by that this is playing at the Greenbelt Theater this week. And I don't know, something like that might work a little bit. But most importantly, I'd like to know what further consideration there has been to the proposal announced just within the last 2 or 3 months that the city is considering essentially taking over not the theater programming, but the operations of the theater, making it a formal part of Greenbelt Recreation Department. That would relieve the programmers, Caitlin and her team, from much of the financial hassle that they have to deal with. They shouldn't be dealing with it in the first place. They should be dealing with the programming. So I'm wondering if there could be more said about that proposal, which was floated just within the last 2 or 3 months. Thank you.
There hasn't been any announcement to that effect, Mr. Samaron?
No, there hasn't, but I want to go back to the previous question, the first question, which was regards to thinking creatively of other opportunities that we can enhance the marketability and attracting consumers to the cinema. And that's also a question that Mr. Hartman raised. We have discussed it with the director, other opportunities to bring in more users into the space. Among them is, and I've briefly discussed this with the mayor, is hosting events at the cinema. And one of them is, not my brilliant idea, sponsoring Join or Die events and having more of those. It brings in more people into the cinema, and we can sponsor the movie, and the cinema does what it does well, which is in addition to movies, it's concessions and other items that lead to experience. So I think hosting more events there internally with DEI Officer Tyra Smith, we talked about hosting activities for employees and families and at the cinema to want to do staff development programming there, and that would also bring in more people to the cinema. Council has discussed doing meet and greets in the community. We can host meet and greets or several meet and greets there, bring in more people.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
And obviously, the leveraging our 18,000 subscribers and getting that message out to a much larger audience.
That's not a heavy lift for us to work collaboratively. I mean, it's our theater, the building.
Correct. We're invested. It's our theater. And the partnership that we have with the cinema, it's an operating agreement. They're working on behalf of the city.
Councilmember Pompey.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, similar to what Mr. Samaran was saying, the Advisory Committee on Education this year gave grants to teachers. Like, we sort of ran these contests where we gave grants to teachers so that they could have a screening for their students at the theater, which is, and granted, these are not the money makers, right? The field trips, the educational field trips, but they are raising awareness that the theater is there. So there are some other things. I just bring that up because that is something else that the city is doing, like by bringing in the students, bringing in the teachers, and then the teachers see that this is an option for them. It's just another way that we are trying to just raise the profile of the theater.
Bringing in students to the cinema does bring business. Now, I have two students.
Yeah, it adds up, all those popcorns.
Hey, do we have any comments online?
No.
Okay, well, at this time, I think we can go ahead and kind of wrap up this portion of the work session. I just really want to thank Josue Samaran, Bertha Gaiman, Tim George, Chandria Andrews, and James Wasinski for all of their work in pulling this document together. But the budget, it rises up from the rank and file into the department heads who took time out of their busy schedules to be with us tonight and really year-round working with council, working with the public. Budget, it's a working, living document. So it has to be a reflection of the needs of the community and the process that we go through. While it may seem a bit cumbersome, I think it's important to do it this way. So on behalf of the council, I just really want to thank everybody in the room for being here. And we do have a public hearing, and it's conceivable that during that public hearing, our residents may bring up other ideas or that we may not have considered. So there's always the possibility of a change. But this is the penultimate. I love that word penultimate because this is the next to last step. Almost. So we're almost there.
Almost there.
Yeah. So we're going to go to information items. Did you have a question, please?
No, I don't have a question.
If you should come up to the microphone there or here or either one.
I really don't have a question, but I would like to invite everyone on Saturday from 10 to 6 at the Sports and Learning Complex. We will be performing, we'll have a tent and we'll have a table along with, we'll have 2 clips where we'll be performing with Channel 5 again on Saturday at the Sports and Learning Complex. So if you haven't seen us perform before or you haven't seen us, this will be a good opportunity for you to come out. There's over 100 groups of performers that will be there, health screening, everything like that. So I'm inviting everyone. You don't have to come and stay the whole day. You could come out and spend an hour or 2. Just make sure you see me and say hi. I appreciate it. But if you have time, I know everyone is busy and it's a last minute notice. So I'm inviting you guys out. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Please keep us posted on, because you guys are out there representing the city of Greenbelt quite frequently. We don't always hear about it, but I know and we know that you're doing some great work. Hey, there's one more thing about the budget process. You know, council and going through each department, we had some different suggestions about performance measures and just, slight modifications here and there. And we understand that it's a negotiation between the city manager and department heads. But if we want to circle back and make just resubmit any suggestions for performance measures, this is your first time through the budget too, Mr. Summerall.
Yes.
And some of these department heads, they may be trying to pull fast ones on
Oh,
you.
no, the team's very collaborative, very transparent. No.
Not at all.
So I don't know. We may just looking back through my notes, there may be some suggestions about performance measures. Just things. As we're all in this together. So
We took notes from the several performance items that were reported at the different work sessions about how we are tracking attendance versus other meaningful numbers. The team is tracking all kinds of data. So over the next year, we're going to look at our data collection process and look to make improvements. In 2013, council hired a firm named Matrix to do a management assessment. And one of the key recommendations in their report was for the organization to become more data-oriented, data-driven. So I'm going to work on that among the many other things that are on the list. But I think there's room for improvement on data collection and performance reporting.
I strongly advocated for that organizational assessment. My colleagues wisely decided to back me on that.
There's a great...
No comment. No
there's great content. I'm going to digitize it and get it to the rest of the council because I think there's items in there that are relevant to today.
Really been a while since that happened. So
2013.
let's shift to information items, and I'm going to ask Chief Bowers if you would indulge me. There was an incident last night. Can you give us any update or any information about?
Other than the information I provided already that's been on our social media, we had an incident yesterday over by the community church. There was an incident in which a couple gunshots were discharged. One individual was struck and injured. He took himself to the hospital, and we currently continue to investigate the case.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Okay, so we've got a few other information items. Josue, do you want to? Well, actually, Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, mine is pretty quick. It's just because the Transportation Planning Board meeting was today. One thing, there were some projects for safety, for transportation safety that were approved as part of the meeting today, and one that there was one for Prince George's County, $40,000 for a study of proactive approaches to transportation safety, exploring near-miss data and innovative technologies. And so I'm not sure, they didn't really have details about when that started, but the idea is to look at ways to use things that are not actual accidents or fatalities or casualties, but things that are near misses, and use those because that can also be an indication of a dangerous intersection or a dangerous area. And so that I thought was interesting. And we'll just have to pay attention and see if we can contribute to that. And then the other thing, of course, the big thing, as we talked about on Monday, was this vote on the air quality conformity analysis. MDOT did offer their amendments to remove the I-495 East toll lanes project, and that was accepted without really too much commentary, as well as some additional language de-emphasizing that segment D of the I-270 Express toll lanes project, and that was also accepted without too much objection. City of Rockville was still not completely happy, I don't think, but they didn't offer their own amendment to change that. That, and then there was Eric Olson put forward an amendment to remove the I-495 South Side Express Lanes project, and then another, and it was somebody from Virginia amended to take that out for today, but revisit it at our June meeting. So the list passed, minus the I-495 East toll lanes, with some caveats to the 270 lanes, and with the Southside Express lanes currently removed, although the actual vote on that will be in June. So we'll see what happens in June, but that's sort of the result of that.
I think there's some real equity issues around toll lanes, and because of the nature of Prince George's County and where we fit into the economy in the DMV, so many of our residents are driving to jobs in other places in Virginia or DC. So I, for one, I am not favorable towards toll lanes on this part of 495.
Well, and it seems like that was clearly the vast majority of public comment, and the ones on 270 are still there, but I think MDOT is working with Rockville's concerns.
Right. I had a quick information item, and Ms. Ruby, you might be interested in this. I was just wondering, there's a Historic Preservation Commission meeting coming up on the 21st, and you're going to attend that, and it has to do with the Dora Kennedy French Immersion School, or the original Greenbelt High School. So I'm supposed to call up the chair, John Peter Thompson, something. So I'll keep you posted on that.
And staff is recommending designation, so we'll be going there speaking in support.
Thank you. Mr. Summerall?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My items is more about scheduling the upcoming work sessions. We have items scheduled for June 5th and the 12th that we're looking at potentially moving. The June 5th work session is scheduled to be on the Phase 2 JDI audit process presentation, where council will hear from Privacy Group and talk about the Phase 2 and community engagement process for that work. The mayor has expressed interest in having the Reparations Commission present on that day, so we'll need to move quickly to reschedule that. For the June 12th, I understand that both the mayor and Mayor Pro Tem will be out of town on the 10th and the 12th, so I asked if we would need to reschedule any of those meetings, or how do we manage the schedule for those 2 days. And finally, we need to schedule the work session for CRAB and for the goals and objectives work session. So as we're moving things around the table on these dates, it would be great to get some direction from council, which would be the priority. They're all super important, but what's council's desire in terms of scheduling?
I guess just a question on, yes, I think they're all important, and we have limited time to get to them. For the Reparations Committee, are they, do they have a specific objective for the meeting that they want to convey? Are they ready to present? I'm just not sure where they are in the process, because we want to make the best use of everybody's time. So I want to make sure we're providing the guidance that they're looking for, if they're coming to look for feedback from us, or if we're guiding them in some other direction. I'm just not, versus it's just kind of a status update. Well, we need a status update, but I think if there's direction on that, that would be helpful to know when we should best schedule them to make it a productive meeting.
My feeling is we do need a status update, not just for council, but for the public as well. We impaneled the commission. It's been just about a year and a half. So at this point, before we start talking about the second phase of Tri-Bessie, I think we really need to just check in with the Reparations Commission and see what their thoughts are about doing community action, just where they're at and where they want to go the next half of the year, the next 2 years. I feel pretty strongly about that too.
But is the proposal that we could do them, we could have both of those in, like have the Reparations Commission give us an update and also hear about the Phase 2 audit process? I mean, it seems
one
like
is more important than the
no, I
other.
think, and
That's
I
what I'm
think
trying
those
to
are
say.
also things that there are probably going to be some overlap in some of the discussions. So doing it all, combining those two things, if the Reparations Commission would be ready on the 5th, we could have them give an update, and then we could move into the report from the Phase 2 JEDI audit. I don't feel like either of those things need necessarily their own 2 or 3 hour work session, because they're all, I mean, these are conversations that are going to take a very long time. This is just one little piece. So we could do those and get updates on both of those things, with the recognition that this is an ongoing process and we're going to have further conversation about both of those things later. And in terms of the 10th and the 12th, I am not leaving until the morning of the 11th, because that gets me there in time for the NLC, the advisory advocacy committee meetings. So I will be here Monday night, the 10th. I'm not leaving until Tuesday, the 11th. And I was planning to, if we were going to talk about the Pepco streetlights, I would try to join virtually on the 12th if possible.
See,
Depends on the timing of the meetings,
yeah,
actually, I guess.
for me, I think I'll be able to attend virtually on Wednesday, and I'm not sure if I'm leaving on the 10th or 11th. So I would suggest that we go on with that. My thought is that the two conversations with Tri-Bessie on Phase 2 and the Reparations Commission's the status report and their plans or their thoughts, I think they're contingent. So I think it's premature to engage Tri-Bessie fully on their plans for how they would go about doing outreach in Phase 2 without first getting some input from the Reparations Commission.
Well, but I guess what we're proposing is we could get input from the Reparations Commission and then have the Tri-Bessie report on what they've learned from their surveys about the process. I mean, if we want to get this going, and I think the hope was to start the next phase in August for the JEDI audit?
The new contract will start in July, and the work on the grounds, the focus groups and Tyra is in the room, so she can get into greater details. But in August is to have those focus groups and community engagement. In terms of being a premature from a contract perspective, once council approves the budget on June 3rd, we're moving. The funding for that Phase 2 project is included in the budget. There would be no other vendor for this project. So once we have council's approval on this, we're moving forward and planning on that project kicking off beginning of July.
If it's council's will, you
I'm
can do it that
comfortable
way.
combining the two because I think the topics are related.
So the intent of the process presentation is what? What is the objective for that?
Initially, there was a request from council to schedule a work session on the DEI audit report. Then that conversation morphed into being more future oriented. What does the next phase look like? So this primarily is looking at presenting to council and the community that tunes in on what the engagement process is going to be for Phase 2, how that outreach is going to be done, what are going to be the tools. So it'll discuss the process. And am I missing anything?
Just trying to make sure to see if there is alignment with what we're saying is reparations plus the intent of the process conversation for JEDI. And I do think there is.
And part of that work also includes having a shared understanding of what is DEI work. So there's a guide that's been put together, and we'll hope to release it publicly, that talks about what is DEI work, what are the language that was used in the audit reports and language that we anticipate being part of future reports. I think that folks have reacted strongly to some of the language, and part of this because there's a misunderstanding about the language.
I think there was a strong desire to have that conversation. That could be a lengthy conversation. So if that is the intent of the conversation, then there will not be enough time
Correct.
to have a conversation about reparations. So we need to be clear about what we want to get out of that meeting so that we can schedule appropriately.
Right, and this meeting, just to be clear, the work session is not going to review all the language of DEI, but the release of information and guides of where people can access more information and take their time to learn about the DEI learning journey and other materials. But it would not be covered in that work session, just would not be feasible. We could, folks could express feelings that we would just not be ready to deal with.
Guess that's why I was thinking not having them both at the same time or one before the other is probably the best way to proceed.
And that may not stop people from coming and voicing their feelings and opinions about it, and that's part of the process as well. But the intent of the work session is to be future-oriented and talk about what the process is going to be to engage the public and do the assessment.
But if we move it from that date, then we likely won't have time to have a conversation before they start their process in July.
I think we have some time in June.
Not really, because there's not really. We've got MML the last week in June.
Let's see, what about July, the first week in July?
I mean, the first week in July is, of course, 4th of July weekend. So I don't know if that's the right time to be. I mean, we could. This doesn't have July on it, but I would propose that we should not have a work session on the evening of July 3rd.
People out of town.
Because, so we would in theory have the first. I don't know if we have anything, since this schedule doesn't have anything for the July 1st.
Not have anything on the 1st.
So I suppose that could be another option.
Can I ask a question? This may be for Councilmember Pompey. You had mentioned that part of the intent that CRAB wanted to have the meeting was for requesting for funds for activities that they wanted to do. Is that correct?
Yes.
And were there additional objectives that CRAB had in that meeting that you know of so far?
No.
Okay. So,
Although I don't purport to know everything that they want to do, but I do know that those were two things that were on their agenda.
so I'm just wondering if there are priorities that are more time sensitive and we can still meet the need of granting CRAB their request for the funding. Is that an additional date that could be shifted?
The request for the movie sponsorship, I think we can handle that administratively.
Yes, I would think so, yeah.
We just need to be tasked with it and or with that.
And what did the Board of Elections want to meet with us about? Okay, so to provide a report and to talk, so the Board of Elections and discussion, maybe we can look at that and see if it's something related to, for example, the elections, that could be something that might not be as urgent.
Okay.
So am I hearing that council will be interested in rescheduling the Board of Elections and CRAB meeting? And we will be replacing it with the two other meetings that have been raised are the goal session.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely want to have
Yeah,
the
the
goal
frame-
session,
yeah.
framework, yeah.
Although that might not be, the 10th might not be the right evening to do that one if you may be traveling on the 10th. So
That's right. I'm sorry. So do we have to hammer this out right now? Can we?
No, we just want to make sure that as we're scheduling these meetings, we're meeting the desire of council and the priority of these work sessions. We as it is, we've got a schedule figured out, and we have a request to make some adjustments, and we want to make sure that we're sharing that with council so that you're seeing a meeting agenda now or a schedule, and if it changes in a week, we want to make sure you know why.
I agree. I think we can hammer it out separately. I think what would be helpful for me is if it's in addition to the list, understanding what the objective of the meeting is, to know where it sits in a priority perspective. And then we can know this is a high priority, this is time sensitive, we need to make we need to make an approval or something on it, then it has to go here. But without having an understanding about what the objective is or what the agenda items are, it's hard to make that decision.
And I am going to be out of town on the June the 10th. Yeah. So let's hammer it out subsequently, but just talking about it and going back and forth, I think has informed you better of what. So at this time, I propose that we call this work session to a close. There's a bunch of salad and pizza left over there to deal with that on my own, pretty much. So, hey, but seriously, thank you, department heads. Thank you for all the good work that you do. And yeah, very much appreciated. And this